Hey, welcome to Veterans and Commonalities and Autism and Differences. I don't know, I got too long of a tagline. I think I need to reverse it. Glad to be back after a couple of weeks off. If you're tuning in with us, you can catch us on Amazon, Spotify, and different areas in that part of part of life. If you're a listener, you can also tune with us on YouTube and go from there. So yeah, I'm not your formal host as far as knowing everything I want to do, but hey, I am me, and this is where we're at. So today I have Dale Walsh with me. Dale is a part of Mental Health Warriors, and he has his own show, but with me starting to add veterans in with my autism stuff and doing that, I felt that Dale need to kind of jump in here and visit with us a little bit about what he does. I think a lot of that connects with both autism and the veterans community. So um, let's let Dale introduce himself, and then we'll go from there.
Well, thank you, Mary. Can you hear me? Okay and everything?
Yes, sir.
Great. Okay, great. Well, I'm Dale Walsh. I'm the Poetic Warrior. I have my show Straight, Sane, and Sober coming up in 2 hours on this channel. It's and I've been a mental health warrior for about a year now, I think, and I was actually the first North American warrior. I don't know if you knew that, Mary, but I was the first mental health warrior in not only the United States but in North America. So, but basically, I was diagnosed with schizophrenia in 1975, and we'll go into that. But I've been in the trenches of mental illness for 47 years, and I've worked myself out of it to the point where I'm now building a practice called Live Love, for which is a coaching business for the families of those with schizophrenia, because I really feel the families of the seriously mentally ill are the forgotten victims of mental illness. So I want to use my experience with the illness to help them navigate the difficulties that they have daily and more long-term situation.
Cool. That's definitely a topic that um, I personally haven't ventured too far into, and I tend to listen to stuff that you do because in my life I'm a constant learner, probably a lot like yourself, and so that topic is definitely one of the few topics that probably aren't talked about a lot, at least ways in my realm of what I do. Hey, Dale, can you tell me how you would see schizophrenia possibly from
How
maybe
I was schizophrenia?
see how you
Oh,
see.
well, actually the root words of schizophrenia come from the Greek, and it means shattered mind or shattered self. And basically, what happened was I was at Dartmouth College, and I figured out I was God, and I was walking around Dartmouth campus for like 3 days telling everybody my "Hi, I'm God" joke. And then one night the campus cops came in and they said, "Would you come with us?" And I said, "Sure." So I thought they were going to take me to meet the president of the university, but instead they took me to the infirmary, where I was interrogated for the next 4 hours by three sets of Ivy League psychologists and psychiatrists. And then 3 days later, I was in a mental hospital in New York City for 13 weeks. And I came to a program, a residential program in Hackensack, New Jersey, where I still live, and was in that for 6 years, 5.5 years. And I got out of there and I got my own apartment, which is a big accomplishment for a schizophrenic, I think. I didn't realize it at the time, but you know, but a lot of schizophrenics once they're afflicted, they never make it out. They never make it out. The old statistics said that 33% get better, 33% stay the same, and 33% get worse. And in my own experience, I've only known one other schizophrenic who really was like functional and recovered. And Lord bless him, he died about 5 years ago of a brain tumor. But the shattered mind concept is it's very. My first doctor told me my brain was broken, and that stigmatized. I stigmatized myself with that for like 30 years. So, uh, but psychiatry has made a lot of progress since I first got sick, and I think they're coping with it better. But then there's a mental health crisis, so that you know schizophrenics are like not getting the treatment they need just because doctors don't have the time at this point.
Yeah. Um, so Dale, I know you've been around quite a bit in the population and stuff. Do you see schizophrenia or people that have schizophrenia? Is it common in veterans and people with autism, or is that something that you have not researched, or you know?
Actually, my friend who I told you was recovered. He was a veteran himself. His name was Chuck Zahn, and he had PTSD from his. He was a military policeman guarding nuclear weapons in Germany, and he had to get out of the army quickly because he just did some things that basically got the whole base after him. So they were positive things, but basically he there was a nuclear drill, and so they got in the bunker ready in case in case there was a real nuclear attack, and everybody starts passing around a hash pipe, and Chuck was the only one who didn't partake. And as soon as the drill was over, he reported everybody to the commanding officer. So he became like the base narc, and consequently, his life was threatened, and they got him out of the army pretty quickly. And about 2 years later, he had like a major psychotic break, and and so, but ultimately he recovered, and he was, as I said, he was one of my best. I called him my best buddy, but that's the only. Uh, Actually, I met some veterans when I was in the hospital a few times. So I think that the stress of army life can have an effect, and the irony about schizophrenia is it's so severe, but really they know very little about it. They don't even know what it is, and what brings it on. They say it's a chemical imbalance in the brain, but ultimately nobody knows what causes schizophrenia. I mean, there are like genetic causes and trauma causes and environment, nurturing causes and naturing causes, and so it's a big mystery, Mary. It's like, and this has to be researched further, but I feel that my goal and my calling is to give a voice to the schizophrenics who can't speak up for themselves.
Right. Okay, cool. So I have a couple questions for you. One of them is, can you see somebody, or personally, in your view, see somebody that you think has schizophrenia? Is there something that triggers it, or is it just something that, like you said, is just comes about, or
Well,
what's your feeling on?
I think there are always signs, and but the signs can be very well disguised. One of the things about schizophrenia is that normally in males it normally hits people between the ages of 15 and 25. So that's right in the adolescent development stage. So a lot of symptoms which are the result of schizophrenia can be like sort of like brushed aside, or ignored because people say, well, it's just like someone growing up. So that's a danger. But with me, uh, it really, I think this is true of most schizophrenics. It's like a snowball effect towards destruction or psychosis. They're like they're little signs at the beginning, and then if it goes untreated or it goes unnoticed, then it picks up momentum and until you have a full psychotic break, which was happened to me.
Yeah. So I have a question that might be of interest, and you may have been asked this question before. Do you think that schizophrenia can kind of be laid dormant and be triggered later, or is it something that takes a lot of process to actually figure out?
Uh, well, I am hearing two questions. So, can it lay dormant? I think that it can. I mean, like my first doctor once again used to say, if you'd never done acid, if you'd never done LSD, then you wouldn't have had the problems you did. And he said you can smoke pot till it comes out of your ears, Dale, but never do LSD again. And so when I went to the program, my doctor was like very adamant about how marijuana was like tied up with my symptomology and everything. So, and I refused to give it up because I said it was self-medication. I tell him it was medication. But one of the things that I always like talk about, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but there's this thing called Agnes Ignosia, which is a term taken from neurology and stroke victims, where a person is unable to understand that there's something wrong with them. So a person might be like completely psychotic and like being chased by the CIA and locking every door and closing every window in the house, and he'll think it's normal and it's like justified, whereas his family sees this as psychotic behavior. So there's a disconnect a lot of times between, I hate this word, but between the patient and the loved ones around them. And that's one of the things I like really strive for in my coaching business is to be able to like explain behaviors to the family members so that they might not be able to tolerate them, but at least they can understand them.
Yeah, I think that's a common theme I see with the two areas that I work with. As people need to be understanding of their loved ones and be able to kind of, in my case, read body language and tone of voice and stuff, because I think that is one of the things that often gets left in the dust is people aren't paying attention to what's
Right.
going on in their lives. Um, and so when you went through all this, Dell, how did that deal with your mental health and stuff?
Well, basically, I was in Agnes Ignosia for the first 10 years of my illness. I didn't see anything wrong with saying I was God. I mean, to me, it was like a natural progression and a part of my self growth. And and then I had a transformative experience where basically the original Dale at the age of 30 was like blown up in a self-induced thermonuclear attack where I saw the whole Earth incinerated. So that changed me, and I went into another personality for 30 years. But basically, um, the the process of recovery is like constant, and it's I used to say uh, schizophrenia isn't like a common cold. It's more like chronic pneumonia of the brain. So you really have to work. You have to be willing to work. You have to have the insight to know that that you need help, and and ultimately the bottom line is that unless you are willing to really work at it, you're not going to get better. And the motto of my company is recovery is always an option, but I always say pivotal word there is option, because a person has to be willing to work and do the work to be in order to recover.
Yeah, I find it fascinating because you're talking, I guess for me, you give the true meaning to voices in your head when you're talking about seeing different stuff and thinking that you have a God complex and stuff like that. I think that gives a whole new meaning to voices in the head. And I whine and complain about just simple paperwork, which I just spent 2 hours doing and stuff, and I got different places I need to go, and I hear voices in my head. No, you need to do this. You need to do that. That's nothing compared to what you had to deal with. And is that stuff that you still deal with now, or are you on a different? Are you,
Well,
you know?
my problem, Mary, was never voices. I never hallucinated in my life, even when I've been on LSD. So my problem was delusions, and the thing about delusion. I mean, I can talk about delusions better than I can talk about voices. But basically, the thing about delusions is, uh, I don't know if you know what confirmation bias is, but basically, and it's the reticular activation system in your brain. But basically, if you say something or you do something, then your brain will like find everything it can to justify and um, to justify that belief. So, as time went on, for instance, my first roommate in the hospital was named Gabriel. My mother was named Mary. Her second husband was named Joseph, and her third husband was the judge. So, it's just like there was more. At least to my mind, more and more evidence was piling up that I wasn't delusional and that I was God. And then I had that transformative experience, and I realized, just how deluded and how sick I had been, and that set me on a whole different path. But ultimately, I lost Dale for 30 years because Dale was was the one who had the delusion, and my body and my brain basically compensated by making me someone else who I called Dewey, uh, and for 30 years until Dale could get back into the sanity of his youth.
Nice. Interesting. It's one of those where I know you and I've kind of discussed it a little bit, just in passing and on other podcasts that we've done together. But I find that fascinating that you you were married to people with Mary and Joseph and all that. I thought that was a unique outlook for me. So Dale, how is Dale doing today?
I'm sorry, you weren't
How's
clear.
how's Dale doing today?
Dale is doing fine. I'm working as a financial educator. I'm making I'm in for I have been working as a financial educator for like a year, a little more than a year, and I've had like paychecks that are like bigger than anything I've ever seen in my life. I mean, they aren't that big, but like what we call a comma check, where the check has like a comma in it. So I've been paid like in ways that I've never been paid before, and I'm getting live love off the ground. I'm working with a coach, and she's a specialist in building businesses, so from scratch, and so I'm really getting live love off the ground, and I've never been more positive or more optimistic in my life, Mary, to be honest.
That's awesome because I feel like I'm doing the same thing with my business and stuff, and just trying to close the gap between always doing this much and staying down here monetarily. But yeah, I've been doing the same thing, checking boxes, and eventually I'll be done checking boxes and maybe
Right.
just be able to associate with other people and be able to take not only my business but your business, and um, be able to show everybody that it's possible to get from point A to point B.
Well, Well, the thing that I've really come to realize in like the last 6 months to a year is you're a prisoner of the story. You're a prisoner. You're a hero uh, to the story that you tell about yourself. And when basically my financial education company is like a self-development company, and one of the top people in it recently said, if you don't kill your past, no, if you don't let the past die, then you'll kill your future. And that's really the process that I'm going through right now. And I think that's why I'm like so optimistic, because I've finally been able to shed the skin of my past and be liberated. I mean, I can still talk about what happened and everything, but there's no longer like that connection of like feeling that that's my identity. And that's another thing that I teach in Live Love is, your loved one identifies, his identity is defined by the illness, rather than just saying this is an illness that I have. I mean, it's like sort of like a diabetic. A diabetic sometimes defines himself as a diabetic rather than a person with diabetes. And reinforced even more with mental illness, because diabetes is a physical thing, but mental illness is like a mental thing, and it's like much easier to adopt a personality that you mentally identify with than physically.
Yeah, I can totally understand that, because anybody that's been around and watched any of my podcasts or anything that I've done interviews with, you know, they know I'm autistic. Okay, well, that's cool. I'm autistic, but I don't let that define me. And that's why I'm sitting in front of you today, because this is part of my challenge, is to be in front of a camera. In fact, I just had this discussion with one of my good friends, Trish from Canada, last night. How can we sit and we have zero problems about sitting here talking to each other on camera. But when it comes to doing a TikTok or a personal video to put on StreamYard, how come we fear that? That's because all we see is ourselves. Where here, I see you and I'm confident that I can talk to you. And so, yeah, I literally just had this conversation last night. And so, even though I define myself in my categories as either having autism or am autistic, that does not define me, and my passion is for autism and veterans, and anybody that's been in my space for any amount of time can see the passion. And I know you've said it before, I just the passion and the love. And um, on some of my other shows, I will always tell you I'm a humble leader. I don't get loud. I can agree to disagree. So yeah, I totally understand where you can't let your past define who you are now. You have to move from here and go there.
Well,
And
the one thing that comes up for me is, basically for the last 4 or 5 years, since I got the idea to create Live Love, and I've had like some clients and everything, but now I'm like really systemat excuse me, systematizing it and like really bringing it to reality. But I had to what I was going to say is I've had coaches instead of therapists and doctors for the last like 5 years. And one of the things, what my old coach, God bless him, uh, it, that he said, just take 30 minutes every day and sit in silence. And you don't even have to meditate. Just sit in silence and see what happens. And the first day I did that, at the end of the 30 minutes, bam, this word came into my head: exposure. And I said, that's it. That's like what my greatest fear is. My greatest fear is of exposure. And like you said, you can sit here and talk with me, but you know, I but ultimately, I'm working through myself the ability to like be, as I said, to be a speaker for the schizophrenics who can't speak for themselves. But this idea of like fear of exposure, I think, is very prevalent in mental illness, just because there's just so much stigma attached to mental illness that the people are like reluctant to reveal it.
Yeah, I think mental health, excuse me, mental illness gets skipped over a lot just simply because people assume, oh, it it's just you being you, and people struggle with being able to vocalize how they feel about where they're at mentally, and a lot of times that's where I have to sit there and take my time and, like you said, take 30 minutes, and you know what, you have to release that feeling, and you have to be able to speak about it and speak openly about it. And I think that's what we talk a lot about here is um, getting rid of the stigma of mental health, and being able to speak to somebody like yourself on the schizophrenia stage, or like myself on the autism and the veteran stage, and with our other folks in their areas that host podcasts too. I think people are just making mental health issues worse when they don't speak about them.
Right. Well, the thing about it is, I've always loved being on stage, Mary. I've always been an hammy. I mean, ever since I was a little kid, I love like putting on performances and everything. So the fear of exposure isn't like actually a fear of being on camera or being in front of people. It's a much deeper fear, like really revealing myself and letting people know the things that bother me and the things that go through my head, because for basically 20 to 25 years, I was well, basically for 18 years, from 1975 to 1993, I feel that every time I really expressed myself, I was put in the hospital. And I've had 15 hospitalizations, Mary. And I say this proudly. I was hospitalized 15 times. And I was discharged 15 times. So I never like went long term into an institution. I meant into a mental institution. I never went to a state hospital. I always went to Hackensack Medical Center, and I was very friendly there, and the nurses loved me and everything. But the idea of exposure has like two meanings. First off is this fear of camera and being in front of people, but I think the deeper meaning is fear of being authentic and really like revealing yourself to strangers, so that they can understand what schizophrenia is really all about.
Yeah, that fear of being authentically you.
Right.
Yeah, that can catch you up with you. I know. I have to share this. I forget where I was at. Maybe I was shopping, and had somebody walk past me. Hey, I know you. You do this podcast, and I'm like, what do they? I'm like, oh, you can't be talking about me. And then they tagged the mental health warriors when they were talking, and I'm like, oh, oh, okay. Now I've been noticed in Nebraska.
Right.
you're, you're getting to a point where you're getting popular, and as I grow, I get more familiar with that, and I'm okay with that. But when you get pointed out when you're with your family, it's kind of like, you talking to me? And
Right.
look at
Right.
and there's a sense of pride there, and oh, so somebody's noticed me. So I can understand that a little bit. So I know, Dale, you have a show coming up. I am going to go ahead and let you tell the people how we can get a hold of you in the realm, and how they can connect with you, and then we'll end it from there.
Okay, well, actually, I have a website. It's called, as I said, my program. I'm in the process of really building my program into like a transformational program called Live Love, and actually every letter stands for a different concept. And I'm building a 3 month course to like go through those letters that goes learn, integrate, validate, explore, and then love is listen, observe, value, and express. So those are like the 8 steps and then there's a summary session at the end. So it's like 9 sessions over 3 months. And so basically, I'm building the platform right now, and it's not quite ready to launch, but I have a website at www.dew, which is my initials, livelove.net.
Ah, gotcha. That sounds good. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and thank Dale Walsh for joining me today. I really like our conversation. And like I said, I know you have another program coming up because I have so many more questions and
Well,
would love
I'd be happy to come back and answer them, Mary, if you ever
there
have
we go. Yeah, what I might do is add a couple of other people that I'm sure have multiple questions. So I will go ahead and we'll conclude here and then we'll go from there, bud.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Mary. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today.
You're welcome. You have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.